They told her to stop searching. They said hope was dangerous, but Laura never listened. 12 years after her daughter vanished without a trace, a crack in concrete would break the silence and unlock something far darker than anyone imagined. A young, innocent girl was riding her bicycle around the house, and when her mother went to check on her after making lunch, she was gone, vanished without a trace. But 12 years later, workers renovating a property's garage discovered something shocking beneath the concrete floor. A finding that would change everything. Redwood Hollow wasn't the kind of place where children disappeared. The quiet, forested town nestled in the Pacific Northwest had always prided itself on its safety and community spirit. The town was characterized by its misty mornings, when fog would roll through the winding tree-lined roads, creating an almost ethereal landscape. Over the past 10 years, Redwood Hollow had grown modestly, with a few new developments sprouting up along its edges. The surge of Airbnb rentals had brought a steady stream of visitors, as remote work made rural escapes more popular for city dwellers seeking temporary refuge in the tranquility of the forest. That afternoon in late August, Laura Whitmore pulled into her driveway at exactly 3:17 p.m., just as she did most weekdays. At 40, her honey blonde hair was beginning to show strands of silver that she no longer bothered to hide. The lines around her eyes had deepened over the years, etched there by a grief no parent should ever have to bear. Laura switched off the engine of her aging car and gathered her pastry utensil box and uniform. As a pastry chef at the Morning Roost, she typically worked the early morning shift. She'd start her day at 5:30 a.m., preparing the day's pastries and desserts, and finish by mid-afternoon, allowing her to come home to an empty house that never stopped feeling too quiet. Laura Whitmore was a mom, or used to be a mom, before her daughter Emily disappeared 10 years ago. Emily was only 8 when she vanished one morning during summer break. Laura had been in the kitchen preparing lunch when she realized she hadn't heard the familiar sound of Emily's giggles for over an hour. She'd called out, checked the backyard, then the front yard, then the neighbors' houses. By nightfall, the entire town was searching for the little girl with the bright smile and golden curls. In the aftermath, Laura's husband couldn't bear the weight of their shared grief. He blamed Laura for not watching Emily closely enough, for being in the kitchen instead of outside with their daughter. 6 months after Emily's disappearance, he filed for divorce and moved to Eugene, leaving Laura alone with her guilt and a house full of memories. As Laura entered her home, she placed her pastry utensil box on the kitchen counter and hung her black and white checkered uniform on the back of a chair. The house was quiet as always. She was about to head upstairs for a shower when her phone rang. The screen displayed a name she hadn't seen in years. Detective Marcus Reed. Dean had been the lead investigator on Emily's case. In the early days, he'd call Laura daily with updates. But as months turned to years and the case went cold, the calls had stopped. Now Laura often had to reach out to the police department herself, only to be told there were no new leads. Her heart raced as she answered. Detective Marcus Reed. Miss Forrester, good afternoon. His voice was deeper than she remembered, perhaps aged by the years that had passed since they'd last spoken. Are you at home? Yes, I just got back from work. Is everything okay? There was a brief pause. Something's come up related to Emily's case. It's important. Would it be all right if I came by to speak with you in person? Laura's hand tightened around the phone. Of course, yes, please come. I'll be there in 15 minutes. After hanging up, Laura paced around her living room, straightening magazines that didn't need straightening, fluffing pillows that weren't flat. Her mind raced with possibilities. Had they found Emily? Was it her remains? Had someone confessed? The uncertainty was agonizing. When she saw the patrol car pull up outside her house through the front window, Laura was already waiting at the door. Detective Marcus Reed stepped out, looking older than she remembered. His dark hair was now peppered with gray, and he carried himself with the slight stoop of someone who had spent too many years hunched over case files. "Miss Forrester," he nodded as he approached the porch. "Please call me Laura," she said. A formality they repeated every time they met, despite having known each other for over 10 years now. "Laura," he corrected. "Thank you for seeing me on such short notice." "Please come in," she said, stepping aside to let him enter, but he remained at the bottom of the porch steps. "Actually, I think it's better if you come with me. We've found something, an important piece of evidence related to Emily's case." Laura's breath caught in her throat. "What is it?" "We found Emily's bicycle," he said, his face serious. "The forensic team is investigating the location now." "Her bike? Where? How?" Laura's questions tumbled out. "It was discovered at an Airbnb property not far from here. It would be best if you came with me so you could identify it and confirm that it belongs to Emily." Laura didn't hesitate. She grabbed her purse from the hall table and locked the door behind her. As they drove through the familiar streets of Redwood Hollow, Laura realized they were heading down Birchfield Road, a route she took daily on her way to work. When they pulled into the driveway of a large cedar-sided house, Laura felt a chill run through her. "I pass this house every day," she whispered, more to herself than to the detective. "I drive by here every single morning." Detective Marcus Reed gave her a sympathetic look as he parked the car. "We'll figure this out, Laura." The property was bustling with activity. Police officers milled around, some taking photos, others talking in small groups. Yellow crime scene tape cordoned off the garage area, where several people in white forensic suits were working. As Detective Marcus Reed led her toward the garage, a man in a construction vest approached them. "Detective, we finished documenting the initial position of the item," he said. "Thank you, Johnson. Miss Forrester, this is Ryan Delaney, the renovation foreman who discovered the bicycle." The construction worker nodded at Laura. "We were breaking up the concrete for plumbing repairs and to renovate the entire garage when we found it. It was completely buried under the floor." Laura followed them into the garage, where a section of the concrete floor had been broken away, revealing a pit about 3 feet deep. Lying at the bottom, partially covered in dirt and concrete dust, was a small pink bicycle with a white plastic basket attached to the front, even covered in grime. Laura recognized it immediately. "That's hers," she said, her voice barely audible. "That's Emily's bike." She stepped closer to the edge of the pit, drawn by the sight of something her daughter had touched, had loved. The bike was rusted and deteriorated, but unmistakable. "Are you sure?" Detective Marcus Reed asked gently. Laura nodded and pointed to the handlebars. "Those decorations, see the purple and pink streamers? Emily never let anyone take those off. She loved them." Her voice broke on the last word, and she covered her mouth with her hand. "The bike was deliberately placed here," the construction foreman added. "It wasn't just accidentally covered up during construction. It was buried deep, meant to be hidden." "Was there?" Laura couldn't finish the question, fear constricting her throat. Detective Marcus Reed understood. "There are no human remains, Laura. Just the bicycle." Laura nodded, relief mingling with the renewed grief of seeing her daughter's possession after so long. "Thank you for confirming this for us," Detective Marcus Reed said. "The forensic team will now extract the bicycle and analyze it for fingerprints and any traces of DNA. Though after 12 years underground, I'm not sure what they'll be able to find." "Have you spoken to anyone about this? The owners, or we've contacted the property caretaker, a man named Ernest Buckley. One of my officers went to pick him up about half an hour ago. We also have the contact information for the last guests who stayed here. They checked out yesterday and live in Eugene. We're reaching out to them as well." Laura stared at the pink bicycle in the pit, the most tangible connection to her daughter she'd had in 12 years. For the first time in a long time, she felt something other than the dull ache of loss, a spark of hope. Laura felt rooted to the spot as she watched the forensic team work. She took several photos of the bike with her phone, careful not to disrupt the investigation. The forensic officers were meticulous, documenting every angle before preparing to remove the bicycle from its concrete tomb. "We'll treat this with the utmost care," a female forensic officer assured Laura, noticing her anxious gaze. "Every detail matters." As they continued their work, the sound of tires on gravel announced the arrival of another police vehicle. Through the garage's open door, Laura saw two uniformed officers escorting an older man toward the house. He appeared to be in his late 50s, with thinning gray hair and a weathered face. His posture was slightly stooped, and he walked with the careful steps of someone trying to appear smaller than he was. "That's Ernest Buckley, the property caretaker," Detective Marcus Reed said, following Laura's gaze. "Let's go hear what he has to say." They walked outside to where the officers had brought the man to stand near the patrol car. Up close, Ernest Buckley looked even more weathered, with deep creases around his mouth and eyes that darted nervously between the detective and Laura. "Mr. Mallory," Detective Marcus Reed began. "I'm Detective Marcus Reed, lead investigator in the Emily Whitmore disappearance case. This is Laura Whitmore, Emily's mother." Ernest Buckley nodded stiffly, not quite meeting either of their eyes. "I heard something was found. The officers wouldn't tell me much, just that I needed to come here right away. We've discovered a child's bicycle buried under the concrete floor of the garage," Detective Marcus Reed explained. "It has been identified as belonging to Emily Whitmore, who disappeared 10 years ago at the age of 8. Ernest Buckley's eyes widened. "A bicycle under the concrete." His voice rose slightly. "I don't know anything about that. I'm just the caretaker. I deal with the guests and property upkeep, that's all. But I do know the owner ordered a renovation on his garage." "How long have you been working as the caretaker for this property?" Detective Marcus Reed asked. "About 10 years now, since Mr. Colburn decided to rent it out through Airbnb." "And who is Mr. Colburn?" Ernest Buckley shifted his weight from one foot to the other. "Vance Colburn. He's the owner. Lives in Asheville, North Carolina now. Has for years. He comes back once or twice a year to check on the property, but otherwise, he trusts me to manage everything." Detective Marcus Reed maintained eye contact with Ernest Buckley as he continued his questioning. "When was the garage floor last renovated or repaired?" "Not since I've been here," Ernest Buckley replied. "The house was built about 9 years ago. Mr. Colburn lived here for a few years before moving to Europe." Laura watched the exchange, trying to read Ernest Buckley's body language. There was something in the way he kept glancing at the garage, a nervousness that seemed excessive even under the circumstances. Detective Marcus Reed's voice took on a harder edge. "Mr. Mallory, I'll be direct with you. The main suspects in this case at this point are the people who have had regular access to this property. That's you and the owner. For a guest to bury a bicycle under concrete would be highly unusual and difficult to accomplish." Ernest Buckley's face flushed red. "You think I had something to do with this? I wouldn't dare to do such a thing. I'm a property caretaker, not a criminal. I don't know anything about any missing girl or bicycle. We'll need the records of all guests who have stayed here over the years," one of the uniformed officers said. Ernest Buckley nodded quickly. Of course. I can provide all of that. This property is one of the favorites in the area. Some guests have stayed for months, even a year or two, especially since remote work became common. I have all the records." "You're suggesting the bicycle could have been buried by a long-term guest?" Detective Marcus Reed asked skeptically. "I'm not suggesting anything," Ernest Buckley said, raising his hands defensively. I'm just saying I don't know how it got there. For all we know, it could have been there before I started working here." Detective Marcus Reed exchanged glances with one of his officers, who pulled out a tablet and began tapping on the screen. After a moment, the officer spoke up. "According to county records, this property was built in 2012, about a year before Emily Forer's disappearance in 2013. "Well, there you have it," Ernest Buckley said quickly. "The bike must have been placed there during construction before the concrete was poured. I wasn't even working for Mr. Colburn then." Detective Marcus Reed's expression remained impassive. "We'll need to speak with Mr. Colburn as soon as possible. In the meantime, Mr. Mallory, I'd appreciate it if you stayed in town and made yourself available for further questioning." Ernest Buckley nodded vigorously. "Of course, Detective. I want to help any way I can. I'll give you any information you need." Laura watched as Detective Marcus Reed directed his officers to coordinate with international law enforcement to contact Vance Colburn in Switzerland. The property would be thoroughly searched, and all guests who had stayed there would be contacted and interviewed. Detective Marcus Reed turned to Laura. "We've alerted the local media about the discovery. They'll probably be here soon. Would you like to make a statement?" Laura shook her head. "No, I don't think I can handle that right now. It's too much." "I understand completely," he assured her. "I'll have an officer escort you home. We'll keep you updated on everything we find." As Laura was led back to a patrol car, she saw news vans beginning to arrive, reporters setting up cameras at the edge of the property. The sight of Emily's bicycle had awakened something in her, a desperate hope that had lain dormant for years. But with that hope came the fear of disappointment, of having her heart broken all over again. As the officer drove her home, Laura stared out the window at the familiar streets of Redwood Hollow, seeing them with new eyes. Somewhere in this town perhaps were answers about what had happened to her daughter, and for the first time in 12 years, she felt like she might actually find them. Back at home, Laura thanked the police officer for the escort and went straight to her bedroom. Her mind was spinning with the events of the afternoon, the discovery of Emily's bicycle, the questioning of Ernest Buckley, the renewed investigation. She changed out of her work clothes into a comfortable pair of sweatpants and an old university sweatshirt, then padded barefoot to her home office. The room that had once been Emily's bedroom had been converted into a workspace years ago, when Laura could no longer bear to pass the door every day and see her daughter's things untouched, waiting for a return that never came. The walls were now a neutral beige instead of the bright yellow Emily had chosen, but Laura had kept a few of her daughter's drawings framed on the wall. Unwilling to erase her completely, Laura sat down at her computer and logged into the online forum she had frequented for the past 10 years, Missing Children's Support Community. The group had become a lifeline for her over the years, connecting her with other parents who understood her pain and helping her navigate the complicated emotions that came with having a missing child. Her hands trembled slightly as she created a new post. Today, after 12 years, police found Emily's bicycle buried under concrete in the garage of an Airbnb rental property in town. I drive past this house every day on my way to work. The investigation is ongoing. I'm feeling overwhelmed with emotion, but wanted to update all of you who have supported me for so long. This could be the break we've been waiting for. She attached one of the photos she had taken of the bicycle in the pit and hit post. Almost immediately, notifications began to pop up as members of the community responded with messages of support and hope. As Laura scrolled through the replies, a notification appeared for her private messages. She clicked on it, expecting a message from one of the forum moderators or a longtime member she had become close with. Instead, what she saw made her gasp in shock and horror. The message contained a photo, one she recognized as a picture she had shared on the forum years ago of Emily riding her pink bicycle in front of their house. But this version had been grotesquely altered. Emily's smiling face had been replaced with what appeared to be a dead pig's head crudely photoshopped onto her daughter's body. "Oh my God," Laura whispered, her hand covering her mouth. Below the disturbing image was a short video clip. With trembling fingers, Laura hit play, immediately regretting her decision. The video showed someone chopping what appeared to be a pig's head, then wrapping it in transparent plastic wrap. The footage was grainy and poorly lit, but clear enough to be deeply disturbing. "I'm sorry I can't assist with that request." She needed to document this before reporting it to Detective Marcus Reed. Steeling herself, she opened the laptop again and took screenshots of the message, the altered photo, and the video. Then she typed a reply. "Who are you? If you're man enough to send this filth, you should be man enough to reveal yourself. Who would do something so cruel to a mother who has suffered for 12 years?" She clicked on the sender's username, hoping to find some information about who might have sent such a horrible message. But the profile was private. There were no followers or following counts visible, suggesting the account had been newly created solely for the purpose of sending her this message. Laura paced around the room, trying to calm her racing heart. After a few minutes, she returned to the computer and forced herself to watch the video again. This time, looking for any details that might help identify the sender. She paused the video at various moments, carefully examining the background. There wasn't much to go on, just what appeared to be a wooden surface in an outdoor setting, possibly a table or butcher block. In the corner of one frame, she caught a glimpse of what might have been a type of pine tree visible through a window. Laura shared the photo and the video with the community and sent them to the detective too, hoping someone might recognize something she had missed. She posted it with a message explaining what had happened and asking for help identifying the account or any clues in the footage. As she was uploading her post, her phone rang. It was Detective Marcus Reed. "I just saw what you sent me," he said without preamble. "When did you receive this?" "Just now," Laura replied, her voice steadier than she expected. "I posted an update about finding Emily's bike on my support forum, and this appeared in my private messages almost immediately. I've got our tech team analyzing the video and trying to trace the account." Detective Marcus Reed said, "One thing I noticed right away, the trees in the background of the video look like European alpine evergreens, not the species we typically see around here." Do you think it could be the property owner? He lives in Switzerland, right? It's a possibility we can't rule out." Detective Marcus Reed admitted the timing is suspicious. "We contacted Ernest Buckley earlier today, and it's possible he alerted the owner. But it could also be someone completely unrelated. Perhaps a troll who saw the news about the bicycle and decided to be cruel." "Have you found anything else at the house?" Laura asked. "We've conducted a thorough search of the entire property," Detective Marcus Reed replied. "There are no signs of human remains or any other evidence related to Emily's case, which is positive. We're continuing to process the scene, but so far, the bicycle is our only solid lead." "What about the guests? Have you reached any of them yet?" "We're still in the process of contacting them. As you can imagine, with years of rental history, it's going to be a slow process, but we're prioritizing long-term stays and anyone who was there around the time Emily disappeared." Detective Marcus Reed paused, then continued. "Our forensic team has completed their preliminary examination of the bicycle. As we expected, they found no usable fingerprints or DNA samples. The bike has been underground too long, and the concrete and moisture have destroyed any biological evidence that might have been present." Laura closed her eyes, trying not to let disappointment overwhelm her. "So we're back to square one." "Not at all," Detective Marcus Reed assured her. "Finding the bicycle is a major breakthrough. It tells us that whoever was involved in Emily's disappearance had access to that property. It narrows our focus significantly. After they ended the call, Laura returned to her computer. Her forum post had generated dozens of new replies, with members offering analysis and support. Some agreed with Detective Marcus Reed that the trees in the video appeared to be European species, while others pointed out inconsistencies in the footage that suggested it might be digitally altered or even generated by AI. Laura spent the next few hours reading and responding to comments, grateful for the distraction and the collective expertise of the community. With each supportive message, she felt a little stronger, a little more capable of facing whatever might come next in the investigation. But beneath it all ran a current of dread. Someone out there wanted her to stop looking for Emily. Someone wanted her to believe her daughter was dead, and that someone might have been watching her for years, waiting for the moment when hope returned to crush it once again. The remainder of the day and evening passed in a blur as Laura continued to engage with the online forum. The community had rallied around her, offering analysis of the disturbing video and photo, as well as emotional support. Technical experts in the group had examined the footage frame by frame. "The lighting is inconsistent between frames," one member wrote, "and there's a strange artifacting around the edges of the pig's head that suggests digital manipulation." "I work in video authentication," another commented. "This looks like a composite to me. Real footage of butchering mixed with AI-generated elements to make it appear as though it happened in a specific location." Laura found herself clinging to these technical analyses, preferring to think about the mechanics of the video rather than its horrific content, or what it might mean about Emily's fate. As the night grew later, she realized she had lost track of time completely. The digital clock on her computer showed it was nearly midnight. She logged out of the forum, promising to update the group if she learned anything new, and shut down her computer. Though exhausted, Laura knew sleep would be elusive. Her mind was too active, racing with scenarios and possibilities. Despite this, she went through the motions of her nighttime routine, washing her face, brushing her teeth, changing into pajamas. In bed, she stared at the ceiling, watching the shadows cast by passing car headlights, the bike buried in concrete, the disturbing altered photo, the pig's head video, Ernest Buckley's nervous demeanor, the property owner in Switzerland. The timing of it all seemed impossible to be coincidental. Laura shifted positions, trying to find comfort that wouldn't come. If the sender of that message was in Europe, as Detective Marcus Reed had suggested, they were safely thousands of miles away, hiding behind a screen, tormenting her from a distance. But why? What could possibly motivate someone to be so cruel to a mother who had already endured the worst pain imaginable? And what about that final message? Just accept it and live with it. Was it meant to suggest that Emily was truly gone? That Laura should abandon her hope? Or was it a threat, a warning, to stop pursuing the truth now that evidence had been found? Hours passed, and sleep continued to elude her. Laura watched the digital numbers on her bedside clock change. 1:17 a.m., 2:42 a.m., 3:28 a.m. By 4 a.m., she had given up entirely. "This is ridiculous," she muttered to herself, switching on the bedside lamp. If she couldn't sleep, at least she could be productive. Laura got out of bed and changed into black jeans and a soft green sweater. She gathered her pastry utensil box, her chef's uniform, and her purse. It wasn't unusual for her to arrive at the morning roost early, though 4 a.m. was extreme even by her standards. But the bakery owner, Marge Callahan, had given Laura her own key to the back door years ago, trusting her completely with the business she had built over 3 decades. "The ovens don't care what time it is," Marge Callahan had told her. "And neither do I, as long as the pastries are good." The bakery had become Laura's sanctuary in the years after Emily's disappearance. There was something therapeutic about the precise measurements, the physical work of kneading dough, the transformative magic of heat, turning simple ingredients into something beautiful. In the kitchen, Laura could focus on creating something tangible, something that brought joy to others when she had been unable to protect what mattered most to her. She loaded her supplies into her car and backed out of the driveway. The streets of Redwood Hollow were deserted at this hour, the only illumination coming from the occasional streetlight and the faint glow of dawn beginning to lighten the eastern sky. Laura drove slowly, her mind still processing the events of the previous day. Perhaps by the time she finished her shift, there would be news from Detective Marcus Reed. Perhaps they would have identified the sender of that horrible message or found some evidence on the bicycle that had been overlooked initially. As Laura drove the familiar route to the bakery, her headlights swept over the empty road ahead. The town was silent, most residents still hours away from waking. She followed the winding street that led toward downtown, automatically slowing as she approached the curve near the Airbnb house where Emily's bicycle had been found. Something caught her attention as she neared the property. A light, visible through the trees, coming from one of the house's windows. Laura frowned. Detective Marcus Reed had told her the property was under police investigation, and no one should be there. As she watched, the light suddenly went out, plunging the house back into darkness. "That's odd," Laura murmured to herself. The police might have left an officer to guard the scene, but why would they be turning lights on and off at 4 a.m.? Acting on instinct, Laura slowed her car and turned onto the private road that led to the house. She drove cautiously, keeping her headlights on, but approaching with care. As she drew nearer, she spotted a white van parked near the side of the house. It wasn't a police vehicle. Laura parked her car a short distance away and switched off the engine. She debated whether to call Detective Marcus Reed immediately, but decided to get a closer look first. If it was nothing, she didn't want to wake him at this hour for no reason. She stepped out of her car quietly, closing the door with a gentle push rather than a slam. The pre-dawn air was cool and damp against her skin as she moved toward the house, staying close to the tree for cover. As she approached, Laura saw movement near the front of the property. A figure was walking hurriedly from the house toward the white van. Ernest Buckley, the caretaker. Even in the dim light, she recognized his stooped posture and nervous gait. Ernest Buckley was carrying something, though Laura couldn't make out what it was from her distance. He placed the item in the van and turned back toward the house, then froze as he heard the sound of Laura's footsteps on the gravel driveway. "Who's there?" he called out, his voice tight with alarm. Laura hesitated, then stepped into view. "There is no point in hiding now." "It's Laura Whitmore," she said, walking toward him. "Emily's mother." Ernest Buckley's face was difficult to read in the darkness, but his body language spoke volumes. His shoulders tensed, and he took a half step back toward his van. "What are you doing here at this hour?" he asked, his voice strained. "I could ask you the same thing," Laura replied, stopping a few yards away from him. "I thought this property was off limits during the investigation. I was driving to work and saw lights on." Ernest Buckley shifted his weight from one foot to another. "Mr. Vance, Mr. Colburn asked me to retrieve some important documents from the house, insurance papers, and property records that the police need for their investigation. He got permission for me to collect them." Laura studied him, noticing how his eyes darted around, never settling on her face for more than a second. "At 4 in the morning, Mr. Colburn is in Switzerland." "It's already mid-morning there," Ernest Buckley said quickly. He called when he woke up and heard about what was happening. The police needed these papers right away, and I should get them as soon as possible. The explanation sounded plausible, but something about Ernest Buckley's manner made Laura uneasy. He seemed too nervous, too eager to justify his presence. "I'm just following my employer's instructions," Ernest Buckley continued, moving toward the driver's side of his van. "I need to deliver these papers to the police station now. You shouldn't linger around here, Miss Forrester. This is a crime scene." Laura nodded slowly. "I'm heading in the opposite direction anyway," she said, pointing back, toward the road she had come from. "I'm on my way to work." Ernest Buckley gave a curt nod and climbed into his van. Laura walked back to her car, listening as the van's engine started behind her. She waited until Ernest Buckley had pulled away and driven down the private road before getting into her own vehicle. Once inside, Laura immediately reached for her phone and called Detective Marcus Reed. Despite the early hour, he answered on the third ring, his voice alert. "Laura, is everything all right?" "I'm not sure," she replied quickly, explaining what she had just witnessed. "He said he had permission to enter the house," Detective Marcus Reed asked, his tone sharpening. "Yes, to collect documents for the owner. He claimed they were needed for the investigation." "That's absolutely false," Detective Marcus Reed said firmly. "No one has permission to enter that property right now, especially not in the middle of the night. Whatever Ernest Buckley was doing there, it wasn't authorized by us." Laura felt a chill run through her. "Should I follow him? He just left a few minutes ago." "Absolutely not," Detective Marcus Reed replied immediately. "He could be dangerous, especially if he feels cornered. Stay where you are. I'm sending officers to your location now, and I'll dispatch others to look for Ernest Buckley's van." "I'm actually not at the house anymore," Laura explained. "I'm in my car on the main road. Ernest Buckley has already left." "Which direction did he go?" "West on Cedar Ridge Road." "Stay where you are, Laura, or go back. We'll handle this. We'll find him." Laura agreed and ended the call. She sat in her car, engine running, thoughts racing. What had Ernest Buckley really been doing at the house? What had he taken? And why at this hour, when he thought no one would see him? The answer came to her with sudden clarity. He was removing evidence, something that connected him to Emily's disappearance, something he couldn't risk the police finding. Laura's hands tightened on the steering wheel. She had promised Detective Marcus Reed she wouldn't follow Ernest, but something inside her, the mother who had lost 12 years searching for answers, couldn't simply drive away. Not when the truth might be so close. She put her car in drive and turned west onto Cedar Ridge Road, following the path Ernest Buckley's van had taken. She would keep her distance, she told herself. She wouldn't confront him. She would just see where he was going. And this road could also lead to the Morning Roost. Laura continued driving west on Cedar Ridge Road, keeping a careful eye out for Ernest Buckley's white van. The road wound through a dense section of forest with few houses and even fewer streetlights. In the pre-dawn darkness, Laura relied heavily on her headlights to navigate the curves and dips in the pavement. She wasn't actively trying to catch up to Ernest Buckley. In fact, she preferred to maintain a safe distance. Her goal was simply to discover where he was going, what he was doing with whatever he had taken from the house. Laura checked her GPS to confirm she was still on the right path. Cedar Ridge Road was a fairly straight shot for several miles, though it twisted and turned through the forest terrain. According to the map, if she continued following this road, she would eventually connect to Hillside Avenue, which would lead her back to town from the western edge, not far from where the Sparrow's Nest Cafe was located. This realization provided some comfort. She wasn't going completely out of her way. She could still make it to work on time. If this detour didn't take too long, she had plenty of time. After driving for about 10 minutes, Laura began to worry that she had somehow missed Ernest Buckley's van, or that he had turned onto a side road she hadn't noticed. But just as she was considering turning around, she spotted a white van parked on the shoulder ahead, partially hidden by the trees. Laura immediately slowed down, then pulled over herself, stopping much further back and turning off her headlights. She didn't want Ernest Buckley to realize he was being followed. From this distance, she could just make out the outline of the van in the growing dawn light. Uncertain what to do next, Laura decided to roll down her window, hoping to hear any sounds that might give her a clue about what Ernest Buckley was doing. As the window lowered, a faint smell reached her. Smoke, acid and chemical, not the pleasant aroma of a campfire. Laura peered through the trees and saw thin wisps of black smoke rising from the forest not far from where Ernest Buckley had parked. He was burning something. She debated her next move. Should she call Detective Marcus Reed now? But what would she tell him exactly? That Ernest Buckley had pulled over and might be burning something in the woods. It wasn't much to go on, and by the time the police arrived, Ernest Buckley could be long gone. As Laura weighed her options, she saw movement by the van. Ernest Buckley emerged from the trees, carrying what appeared to be a metal barrel. Even from this distance, Laura could see that it was a burn barrel, the kind used for safely containing fires when burning yard waste. Ernest Buckley loaded the barrel into the back of his van, his movements hurried and anxious. He kept glancing around, clearly worried about being seen. Laura sank lower in her seat, though she was far enough away and concealed by trees that Ernest Buckley showed no sign of having spotted her. Once the barrel was secured, Ernest Buckley quickly got into the driver's seat of his van and started the engine. Laura watched as his headlights came on and he pulled back onto the road, continuing west. Laura waited until Ernest Buckley's van had disappeared around a bend before she restarted her car and followed, maintaining a greater distance. Now she tried calling Detective Marcus Reed again, but the signal in this area was weak, with only one bar showing on her phone. When the detective answered, his voice was broken and staticky. "Laura, hear you. Where?" "Ernest Buckley stopped in the woods," Laura said loudly, hoping the signal would improve. "He was burning something in a barrel. Now he's driving west on Cedar Ridge Road again. Don't follow. Dangerous." The detective's voice cut in and out. "Police coming." "I can't hear you clearly," Laura replied. "I'll try to call again when I have better signal." She ended the call, frustrated by the poor connection, but determined to keep Ernest Buckley in sight. Whatever he was doing, it was suspicious enough that he felt the need to do it secretly in the early hours of the morning. And given the timing, just hours after Emily's bicycle had been discovered, Laura couldn't help but think it was related to her daughter's case. The road continued to wind through the forest for several more miles before Laura noticed Ernest Buckley's van slowing down ahead. He turned onto a narrow side road that Laura might have missed if she hadn't been watching closely. She drove past the turn, then pulled over when she was out of sight. Checking her GPS, Laura saw that the side road led to a small residential area. Whispering Creek Trail, a cul-de-sac with only a handful of homes set far apart from each other. This must be where Ernest Buckley lived. Laura waited a few minutes, then slowly drove back to the turn. She took it carefully, keeping her headlights dim and moving at a crawl to minimize noise. The lane was narrow and densely forested on both sides, providing good cover as she advanced. After about a quarter mile, the trees thinned out, revealing a small clearing with several houses set well back from the road. Laura parked at the edge of the forest, where her car would be less noticeable, and used her phone's camera to zoom in on the scene. Ernest Buckley's van was parked in front of a modest, single-story home with weathered blue siding. She watched as he unloaded the burn barrel from his van and carried it to the side of the house, disappearing from view temporarily. When Ernest Buckley returned to his van, Laura was surprised to see him wheeling what appeared to be a cart or trolley. It was difficult to make out details from this distance, but the object was distinctly red. A fire trolley, she realized with a start. The kind used to transport items through industrial facilities or warehouses. Ernest Buckley parked the trolley beside the van, its door already open, and hefted something heavy from the trolley into the vehicle. Then he wheeled the trolley back into the house. He was gone for quite a while, leaving Laura to wonder what he could possibly be doing that required such equipment. She checked her phone again, hoping the signal had improved, but still showed only one bar. She tried calling Detective Marcus Reed. "Anyway, Detective, I'm on Whispering Creek Trail," she said as soon as he answered, speaking clearly and hoping he could hear her. "Ernest Buckley lives here. He's brought the burn barrel to his house, and now he has some kind of red trolley. I think he's moving something heavy." This time, the detective's voice came through more clearly. "Laura, listen to me. This is extremely dangerous. I need you to leave that area immediately. Our officers are on their way, but it will take them time to reach that location. Do not approach Ernest Buckley or his property." "I won't," Laura promised. "I'm staying in my car, well hidden." "I understand," Detective Marcus Reed said, his tone softening slightly. "But your safety is paramount. Please start driving back toward town now. We'll handle Ernest Buckley." Laura hesitated, torn between her desire to see what Ernest Buckley was doing and her recognition of the potential danger. "All right," she said finally. "I'm leaving now." But as she prepared to start her car, Laura saw Ernest Buckley emerging from his house again, pushing the fire trolley toward his van. Laura kept her gaze fixed on Ernest Buckley's house, watching as he struggled with the fire trolley at his van. He seemed to be unloading something heavy from the trolley into the vehicle, his movements labored and awkward. From her vantage point, Laura could see him bending and straining, but couldn't make out what he was handling. Once he had finished, leaving the van's rear doors open, Ernest Buckley pushed the empty trolley back toward his house. Laura quickly snapped several photos with her phone, zooming in as much as the device would allow. The images were grainy in the dim early morning light, but they might provide valuable evidence later. Why would he be moving heavy items at this hour, she wondered aloud, especially right after the police found Emily's bicycle. The question swirled in her mind as she continued to watch Ernest Buckley's house. After several minutes, he appeared again, pushing the trolley toward his van for the third time. Like before, he struggled to transfer whatever was on the trolley into the vehicle. This is the third trip, Laura thought. Once Ernest Buckley had completed the transfer, he loaded the trolley itself into the van before closing the doors. He then walked to the driver's side door and climbed in. She checked her phone signal again and called Detective Marcus Reed, keeping her voice low despite the distance between her and Ernest Buckley's property. "Ernest Buckley is loading something from his house into his van using a fire trolley," she reported as soon as the detective answered. "He's made one trip already and has gone back inside for more." "Where exactly are you now?" Detective Marcus Reed asked, his voice tense. "Still on Whispering Creek Trail, parked at the edge of the trees. I'm a good distance from his house. He can't see me, but he's getting in the van," Laura said urgently. "I think he's about to leave." "Our officers are still several minutes out," Detective Marcus Reed responded. "Can you see which direction he's heading without being spotted?" "Yes, there's only one road out of this cul-de-sac. He'll have to pass by me to leave." Laura watched as Ernest Buckley started his van and began to drive slowly down the lane toward the main road. She ducked down in her seat as the van approached, not wanting to be seen. "He's heading back toward Cedar Ridge Road," she whispered into the phone. As soon as Ernest Buckley's van had passed and turned onto the main road, Laura saw multiple police cruisers with lights flashing, but no sirens, racing toward the cul-de-sac. They must have been driving with their sirens off to avoid alerting Ernest to their approach. The first cruiser slowed as it neared the intersection, and Laura saw Detective Marcus Reed inside, speaking urgently into his radio. The other police cars continued past, presumably in pursuit of Ernest Buckley's van. Laura started her car and pulled out onto the road, following the police vehicles at a distance. As she rounded a bend, she saw that the officers had formed a blockade across the road, stopping Ernest Buckley's van from proceeding. The police had positioned their vehicles strategically, leaving Ernest Buckley no path forward or backward. Laura parked her car a safe distance away and watched as officers approached Ernest Buckley's van with weapons drawn, ordering him to exit the vehicle with his hands visible. Ernest Buckley complied, stepping out slowly, his face a mask of resignation. Detective Marcus Reed approached once Ernest Buckley had been secured and handcuffed. Two officers stayed with the suspect while others moved toward the rear of the van. With gloved hands, they opened the back doors. Laura couldn't see what was inside from her position, but she saw the officers' reactions. Shock, followed by urgent activity. Detective Marcus Reed spoke rapidly into his radio, and within minutes, an ambulance arrived on the scene, its lights flashing against the trees. Unable to contain her curiosity and concern any longer, Laura got out of her car and walked toward the scene. A uniformed officer moved to intercept her, but Detective Marcus Reed saw her and waved her through. "What did you find?" Laura asked as she approached the detective. Detective Marcus Reed's expression was grim. "You should prepare yourself, Laura. This is difficult." He led her to the back of the van, where officers were carefully removing what appeared to be black body bags. There were 3 of them, each containing a human form. "They're alive," Detective Marcus Reed said quickly, seeing the horror on Laura's face. "All 3 of them. They appear to be heavily sedated, but they're breathing." Laura stared at the body bags, her mind struggling to process what she was seeing. "Is it one of them, Emily?" she whispered. Before Detective Marcus Reed could answer, one of the medical technicians carefully unzipped the first bag, revealing the full figure of a young woman with pale blonde hair. Though the features were those of an adult, not the 8-year-old child Laura remembered, there was no mistaking her daughter's face. "Emily," Laura breathed, her legs nearly giving way beneath her. Detective Marcus Reed caught her arm, steadying her. "We need to get them to the hospital immediately," a paramedic called out. "They're stable, but heavily drugged." Laura watched in stunned silence as the medical team carefully transferred the 3 body bags to stretchers and loaded them into the waiting ambulance. Emily and 2 other young women, all unconscious but alive. Across the road, Ernest Buckley stood in handcuffs between 2 officers. When he saw Laura looking at him, his face contorted with rage. "You should have accepted it," he shouted at her. "She's dead to me, and she would have been to you too if you hadn't interfered." Laura took a step toward him, anger surging through her body. "How could you?" she demanded. "How could you take her from me? She was just a child." Ernest Buckley spat on the ground, his eyes blazing with a twisted hatred. "You should have just lived with it," he snarled. "That's enough," Detective Marcus Reed interrupted, nodding to the officers to take Ernest Buckley away. They led him to a police cruiser and placed him in the back seat. "I recognize that line," Laura said, her voice shaking. "It's the same message I received online. Your daughter's as dead as this pig. Just accept and live with it." "It is him. He sent me that horrible message and video." "We'll add that to the charges," Detective Marcus Reed assured her. "Right now, the priority is getting those women medical attention. Would you like to ride in the ambulance with Emily?" Laura nodded, unable to speak through the tightness in her throat. After 12 years of searching, of hoping against hope, her daughter was alive. Changed, grown, traumatized beyond imagining, but alive. As she climbed into the ambulance beside Emily's stretcher, Laura gently took her daughter's hand. It was larger than she remembered, the fingers longer, the nails neatly trimmed but unpolished. This was not the hand of the 8-year-old who had ridden away on her pink bicycle, but the hand of a young woman who had endured unimaginable horrors. "I'm here, Emily," Laura whispered, squeezing gently. "I never stopped looking for you. I never gave up." As the ambulance doors closed and the vehicle began to move, Laura held tight to her daughter's hand, vowing never to let go again. The ambulance raced through the morning streets of Redwood Hollow, its siren cutting through the quiet dawn. Laura sat beside Emily's stretcher, holding her daughter's hand and studying her face, a face that had matured from the round-cheeked child in her memories to a young woman of 20. Emily's features were peaceful in unconsciousness, her breathing steady. The paramedic had assured Laura that her vital signs were stable, though they wouldn't know the full extent of her condition until they reached the hospital and doctors could perform a proper evaluation. "How long will she be unconscious?" Laura asked the paramedic, who was monitoring Emily's vital signs. "Hard to say without knowing exactly what she was given," the paramedic replied. "But judging by her reactions to stimuli, I'd expect her start coming around within a few hours once the drugs begin to wear off." The ambulance pulled into the emergency entrance of Redwood Valley Medical Center, where a team of medical staff was waiting. The doors swung open, and Emily's stretcher was quickly unloaded and wheeled into the building, Laura following close behind. "We'll take her to trauma room 2, a doctor in blue scrubs directed. "The other 2 victims are in rooms 1 and 3. Laura listened as the paramedic briefed the hospital staff on Emily's condition, relaying vital signs and their observations during transport. The medical team worked efficiently, transferring Emily to a hospital bed and connecting her to monitors that displayed her heart rate, blood pressure, and oxygen levels. She waited outside until, after a while, a nurse approached and gently touched Laura's arm. "Miss Forrester, the police would like to speak with you." Laura followed the nurse to a private waiting area where Detective Marcus Reed was already waiting for her. "How is she?" he asked as Laura sat down heavily in a chair across from him. "Stable," Laura replied, her voice distant. "Still unconscious. They're examining her now." Detective Marcus Reed nodded. "We have officers stationed outside each of the women's rooms. They're safe now." "Have you identified the other 2 women?" Laura asked. "We believe so tentatively," Detective Marcus Reed said. Ernest Buckley Journal, along with missing persons reports that match their ages and physical descriptions, confirmed they are Kayla Simmons and Juliana Vega. Kayla went missing from Salem 9 years ago at age 9, and Juliana disappeared during a school field trip in Eugene 9 years ago, also when she was 9. Laura closed her eyes, briefly, imagining the other mothers who would soon receive phone calls that would change their lives forever, just as her life had changed hours ago when Emily's bicycle was discovered. "What about Ernest Buckley? Has he said anything?" she asked, opening her eyes again. "Not much beyond his outburst at the scene," Detective Marcus Reed replied. "He's invoked his right to an attorney, but we found plenty at his house. Journals, photographs, records he kept of the girl's development. It seems he maintains some twisted fantasy of being their caretaker rather than their captor. How did he keep them hidden for so long? Didn't anyone ever visit his house? The house has a storm bunker underneath it, converted into a soundproofed living area. From what we can tell, he kept them down there most of the time, especially when he had visitors, which was rare. He's something of a recluse." Laura shuddered at the thought of Emily and the other girls living underground for years, hidden away from the world in a bunker beneath their abductor's house. We also found his laptop, Detective Marcus Reed continued. Our tech team has confirmed he was the one who sent you that manipulated photo and video. He created a new account just for that purpose. The video was, as some of your forum members suspected, digitally altered using AI to make it appear as though it was filmed in Europe. To throw suspicion on the property owner, Laura realized exactly. He was trying to shift the focus away from himself. We've been in contact with the Swiss authorities. They've interviewed Mr. Colburn. He admits to ordering the renovation, but denies any knowledge of this situation. That said, we'll continue to investigate his possible involvement. A doctor entered the waiting room. Miss Forrester, I'm Dr. Naomi Green. I've completed my initial examination of your daughter. Laura stood quickly. How is she? Is she awake? Not yet, but she's showing signs of emerging from sedation. Her physical condition is remarkably good considering the circumstances. She's undernourished, but not severely so, and we found no signs of physical trauma beyond some old healed fractures in her left arm and right ankle. What about sexual abuse? Laura had forced herself to ask the question that had haunted her since Emily was found. Dr. Naomi Green's expression had been carefully neutral. We found no evidence of sexual assault or abuse. From what all three women have told us, Ernest Buckley maintained what he called a fatherly relationship with them. It was controlling and psychologically abusive, but not sexual in nature. The relief Laura had felt at this news had been overwhelming. While the psychological trauma of Emily's captivity would take years to heal, knowing she had been spared that particular horror felt like a small mercy. When can I see her again? Laura asked. You can go in now if you'd like. We've moved her to a private room. She may begin to regain consciousness soon, and having a familiar presence could be helpful. Laura turned to Detective Marcus Reed. I need to be with her. Of course, he nodded. I'll check in with you later. We'll need statements from all three women when they're able, but that can wait until they're medically cleared. Laura followed Dr. Naomi Green through the hospital corridors to a room where a uniformed officer stood guard outside. Inside, Emily lay in a hospital bed, connected to various monitoring equipment. Her eyes were closed, but her breathing seemed different now, less deep, more natural. Laura pulled a chair close to the bed and once again took Emily's hand. I'm here, sweetheart, she said softly. You're safe now. For nearly an hour, Laura sat beside Emily, sometimes speaking softly, sometimes simply watching her daughter breathe. Around 8 a.m., Laura noticed Emily's eyelids beginning to flutter. Emily? Laura leaned closer. Can you hear me? Emily's eyes opened slowly, unfocused at first, then gradually clearing as she took in her surroundings. When her gaze fell on Laura, there was a moment of confusion, followed by a flicker of recognition. Mom. Her voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. Laura's eyes filled with tears. Yes, sweetheart, it's me. Emily's eyes widened as full awareness returned. Where am I? Where's Ernest Buckley? Fear edged into her voice. You're in the hospital, Laura assured her quickly. Ernest Buckley has been arrested. He can't hurt you anymore. You're safe now. Emily stared at Laura as if trying to convince herself that what she was seeing was real. I thought I'd never see you again. Laura's tears spilled over. I never stopped looking for you, never stopped hoping. A nurse entered the room and, seeing that Emily was awake, quickly checked her vital signs before going to alert the doctor. Dr. Naomi Green returned moments later, accompanied by Detective Marcus Reed. Hello, Emily, Dr. Naomi Green said gently. I'm Dr. Naomi Green. How are you feeling? Dizzy, Emily replied. Tired, but okay. That's normal. The medication you were given is still wearing off. We're going to take very good care of you. Detective Marcus Reed stepped forward. Emily, I'm Detective Marcus Reed. I don't want to overwhelm you, but when you feel up to it, We'd like to ask you some questions about what happened." Emily nodded slowly. "The other girls, Kayla and Jules, are they here too? Are they okay?" "Yes, they're both here, and they're both safe," Detective Marcus Reed assured her. "They're still unconscious, but the doctors expect them to recover just like you." Emily seemed to relax slightly at this news. "Good. I promised I'd keep them safe." Laura squeezed her daughter's hand. "You didn't, sweetheart. You all kept each other safe, and now you're home." Dr. Naomi Green gently intervened. "Emily needs rest, but if she feels up to answering a few questions first, that might be helpful for the investigation." Then Emily nodded. "I want to help. I want him to stay locked up forever." "Can you tell us how Ernest Buckley took you?" Detective Marcus Reed asked, pulling out a small notebook. Emily's gaze grew distant as she recalled that day 10 years ago. "I was riding my bike around our house. It was summer vacation, and Mom was inside making lunch." She glanced at Laura. Ernest Buckley drove by in his truck. He stopped and offered me a candy bar. Then he asked if I wanted to see his cat that had just had kittens. Laura closed her eyes briefly, imagining the scene. Her bright, trusting daughter being lured by such a common predator's tactic. "I said no at first," Emily continued, "but he said the kittens were in a garage nearby and I could bring my bike. I really wanted to see the kittens." Her voice broke. "There weren't any kittens. When we got to the empty house, I guess it was the Airbnb place before it was finished, he gave me a drink. It tasted funny, but I was thirsty from riding my bike. Then I got really sleepy." Detective Marcus Reed nodded, making notes. "And then he took you to his house." "Yes, to the bunker underneath. That's where I met Kayla. Jules came later. He told us there was a war outside, that our parents were dead and he was protecting us." Emily's voice hardened. "But we figured out he was lying. We saw newspapers sometimes when he was careless. We knew there was no war." Laura listened, horrified, but grateful that Emily was coherent enough to provide this information. The fact that she could recall these details clearly suggested her mind was intact, despite the trauma and years of captivity. "Did he ever tell you why he took you?" Detective Marcus Reed asked. Emily was quiet for a moment. "He said he was saving us from bad parents who didn't watch us closely enough, who didn't deserve us." She looked at Laura apologetically. "I knew that wasn't true about you, Mom. I knew you loved me." "We've been going through Ernest Buckley's journals," he told Laura during one such visit. "They provide a disturbing glimpse into his mindset. He believed he was rescuing girls from what he perceived as neglectful families. In Emily's case, he claimed he had observed her playing outside unsupervised several times before he took her. "I was in the kitchen," Laura had said, the old guilt resurfacing. "I could see the front yard from the window. I turned away for a few minutes to check the oven." "Laura, none of this was your fault," Detective Marcus Reed had said firmly. "Predators like Ernest Buckley look for any opportunity, any semblance of normal life to exploit. There's no way you could have predicted or prevented this," he continued, his tone grave. "We found evidence in Ernest Buckley's recent journal entries and on his computer. He was planning to move all 3 women to a new location. It appears he had ties to an international trafficking ring operating through the dark web. As the women neared adulthood, he was preparing to sell them." Laura gasped, her free hand going to her mouth. Emily's grip tightened on her other hand. "He was getting nervous about keeping them as they got older," Detective Marcus Reed continued. "More difficult to control, more likely to resist or escape. According to the entries, he was planning to drug them and transport them this week. If you hadn't spotted him at the Airbnb property that night, Laura, and followed him, He didn't need to finish the sentence. If Laura hadn't been unable to sleep, if she hadn't decided to go to work early, if she hadn't noticed the light in the house and investigated, Emily and the other women might have disappeared again, this time perhaps forever. Detective Marcus Reed nodded grimly. "I'm sorry, Emily, but you're safe now, and what you've been able to tell us is helping us dismantle this entire operation. You're helping save other potential victims." Emily sat up straighter in her hospital bed, her jaw set in a determination that reminded Laura so much of the stubborn 8-year-old she'd been. "Good. I want to help. I want to do whatever I can to make sure no one else goes through what we did." Laura felt a surge of pride at her daughter's strength and compassion, even after all she had endured. "There's one more thing," Detective Marcus Reed said. "We've been able to confirm through Ernest Buckley's records and Mr. Colburn's testimony that Ernest Buckley was indeed involved in the construction of the Airbnb property before he officially became its caretaker. He knew Mr. Colburn from a previous job and helped design the house. He was present during the construction phase and had access to the site before the concrete was poured in the garage. So he buried the bike." Then Laura concluded to hide the evidence. "Exactly. Mr. Colburn appears to have had no knowledge of Ernest Buckley's crimes. He's cooperating fully with the investigation both here and in Switzerland." Detective Marcus Reed asked a few more gentle questions before Dr. Naomi Green suggested that Emily needed to rest. The detective thanked Emily and promised to check in later before leaving the room. Left alone with her daughter, Laura stroked Emily's hair gently. "Get some sleep, sweetheart. I'll be right here when you wake up. I promise." Emily's eyes were already drifting closed, the drugs still in her system, making it difficult for her to stay awake. "Don't leave," she murmured. "Never again," Laura promised, settling into the chair beside the bed. "I'm staying right here." As Emily slipped back into sleep, Laura watched her daughter's face, marveling at the miracle of having her back. Whatever challenges lay ahead, the psychological recovery, the adjustment to a world that had continued without her for 12 years, the legal proceedings against Ernest Buckley, they would face them together. After 12 years of darkness, light had finally returned to Laura's life. In the end, it wasn't the discovery of a buried bicycle that had brought Emily home. It was a mother's refusal to give up, a detective's dedication to a cold case, a daughter's will to survive, and the countless small decisions that had led Laura to drive past the Airbnb house at exactly the right moment on that fateful morning. Some might call it coincidence. Laura preferred to think of it as the universe finally setting right what had gone so terribly wrong 12 years before. Whatever it was, she was grateful for every moment, every challenge, every triumph that came with having her daughter home. After 12 years of darkness, they had found their way back to the light together. But it wasn't just what they found. It was where they found it and how deep someone had buried the truth.